Yeah, my name is Mel. It's so lovely to meet you all. It's so lovely to see so many faces here at Google for me today. I was a little bit nervous about this talk, so I'm really grateful for a great turnout. So yeah, I'm an author and I'm a speaker, and I help women primarily heal their relationships with food so they can go on and lead fulfilled and enriched lives without waiting to lose weight first. And it's mainly women that I help, and I believe it's mainly women that struggle with their relationship with food because we tend to be more sensitive to being led by our emotions in general. We tend to be more intuitive. On a whole, that's generalizing, obviously. But you might not even realize that you're in a relationship with food unless you are in a really unhealthy one that is taking over your life in some way. But actually, your relationship with food is just as old as you are. So if you are 30 years old, your relationship with food is also 30 years old. And your relationship with food is really made up of all of your beliefs, stories, memories around food and your weight and your body that you've had your whole life, really. Could have been something that someone said to you one day that triggered a feeling or an emotion, could have been something that you read, could have been the latest diet magazine you picked up. And all of this constitutes this huge relationship with food that you have. And it probably doesn't come as a surprise to you to realize that the reason that I got into doing this work and helping women with their relationship with food and making peace with food was because I was in a really unhealthy, quite abusive relationship with food for a long period of my life. So I'll tell you a bit about my story first. So I grew up never really having any issues around food or my weight. My mum was quite healthy, let us have the odd treat. The household was very healthy. My mum never criticized her body, so I knew that she never dieted. She was very much at peace. And I was quite a confident kid, really loved my life, was really happy at school, had friends, was in the sports teams, felt like my teachers liked me, and I really just was very carefree. And I remember walking across the playground once, and like the girls at school, like how bitchy that was. Do you guys remember? It felt like it was very catty kind of atmosphere. And I walked across the playground, and a girl from one of the years above me said, not directly to me, but just loud enough that I could hear, she said, "Oh, that girl, Mel, she loves herself." And I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I felt like that is like the worst thing that anyone could have ever said to me or about me. I love myself. I was like, how dare I be that girl that loves herself? Like, no one wants to be that person. And at that age, you really just want to fit in. You don't want to be too loud or too big because you just want to fit in. And I remembered at that point, I remembered to think to myself, I am not going to be the girl that loves herself. Anyway, I was determined to be an actress, and I left school and went to college at 16 to do performing arts. And when I got there, it was kind of like this really harsh industry where it was really competitive, and you're basically spending like 8 hours a day in front of the mirror, kind of being taught to look for flaws and imperfections. It's a very perfectionist industry, and I was already a natural, high achiever, perfectionist, which I'm sure probably some of you are in here. And all the girls around me at college were pinching themselves in the mirror, going on these diets, and I just really wanted to fit in. So I basically started dieting as a way to fit in with the girls around me, because I didn't want to be the girl that loved herself. I didn't want to be the one that was too confident and didn't need to do any of that. So I basically started dieting as a way to fit in. And it was in that era of the size 0 thing. There was no Kim Kardashian, there was no big booties and squats and any of this that it is nowadays. It was like that kind of size 0 thing was really glamorized. And it was a really unhealthy environment for teenage girls and for women to be in. And I remember going on the Special K diet. Does anyone remember the Special K diet? Anyone do it? Oh my God, dreadful. Yeah, so basically the Special K diet, for anyone that doesn't know, was a way to lose a dress size in 2 weeks. And basically you got a bowl of Special K for breakfast, a bowl of Special K for lunch, and then you got to have whatever you wanted for dinner. Magic, right? except it wasn't a bowl of Special K, it was like a handful, right? It was like the smallest handful you could imagine. And so I remember like measuring out this bowl of Special K every morning, and it was literally like the smallest bowl you could imagine. And Special K are obviously geniuses, because they realized that if women were going to believe that Special K was their diet food, then they were going to end up overeating and binging on Special K, which is exactly what happened. Before I knew it, I was getting through boxes and boxes and boxes of Special K. So me being a perfectionist and getting into diet culture at a very young age, it wasn't long before I took it to the extreme and developed a full-blown eating disorder. I lost a lot of weight very fast. I restricted myself so much that at one point I couldn't even remember the last time I had a proper solid meal. I was completely spaced out. I went to a really dark place, isolated all my friends and family, but for some reason I felt like I was in control. I felt like I was making a success of this. I thought that I was doing really well at this. And I do believe that an eating disorder is a form of addiction, and that is absolutely how it felt. So what happened next was I got offered this TV job, this acting job, which sounded like the most exciting thing ever to me, because I was 18, and the thought of most of my friends were going off to drama school and uni and taking gap years, and I'd just been offered this TV job straight out the gate, and it should have been a dream come true. I took my whole life up to Liverpool, moved out of my parents' house. I suddenly had this flat, I had money, I was going out to these parties, and I was getting to act every day on set. It should have been the dream. But when, I'm sure you've heard this story before, everything should have been great, and it looked on the outside like it was really glamorous, but on the inside it was not. It was that empty, sinking feeling of, oh my God, this is not it. And my eating swung from barely eating anything to suddenly excessive binging. And I'm talking like inhaling food like I'd never seen food before in my whole life. I was like inhaling it like it was oxygen. And I felt such guilt and shame over this and for gaining weight so fast again that it swung into bulimia, and I would be making myself sick or over-exercising, taking all kinds of illegal fat burners off the internet, and just really punishing myself so much, and then swearing to start the next diet the next Monday morning. And my producer actually called me up to the office once, and she sat me down and said to me, Mel, we really need to talk about something. Your weight, it's all over the place. On screen, one episode you're this size, the next episode you're this size, the next episode you're back to this size. Like, continuity, doesn't really know what to do with you, and the wardrobe department have got all these different sizes for you. Do you need to talk to someone? And I thought I'd been doing a really great job of keeping it secret, but obviously not, and it was so embarrassing to feel like everyone knew. And I was completely crushed. And that night I went home, ran back to my flat, got down, sat on the couch, and picked up the phone. Hey, yeah, it's Mel. I got to order 3 large pizzas, please. Yep, stuffed crust. And when the delivery guy came, I opened the door and he started laughing at me. And he was like, these 3 pizzas all for you, lady. When someone's like joking but not. So I closed the door, sat down with these pizzas, and one by one demolished every single one of them until I was in so much physical pain I couldn't move. I'd never felt so full and yet so empty at the same time. And then I would, of course, swear to start this brand new diet and fix myself the next day, because diets are what would fix this, right? Now, you might have never experienced an eating disorder or disordered eating, but a lot of these addictive patterns show up in much more subtle ways. How many of you guys have ever gotten home from like a really stressful day, and before you've even taken your shoes off, you're like in the fridge looking for answers, looking for that fix of something? And I believe when we do this, it's not the food that's the problem, it's a symptom of a much deeper problem that we need to get to the bottom of and heal. You see, if your relationship with food was a relationship with a partner, what kind of relationship would that be? For me, it was a very abusive relationship, not a loving one, not a healthy one. Maybe your relationship with food is really stale and really boring. Maybe it's like really strict during the week, and then it's just this crazy party or binge on the weekend. Maybe it is really monotonous, the same thing all the time. Maybe it needs a bit of spicing up. You see, food isn't just nourishment anymore for us. It isn't just fuel. We make it mean so many other things. It's the closest thing to us that feels like a substitute for love. So it's really easy to turn to it, to control it, when we feel out of control of our lives. It's the easiest thing to turn to it when we're feeling emotional or when we're feeling any kind of uncomfortable or painful feeling that we just don't want to feel. We want to escape. And us humans are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So it's something that we're all doing all the time. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, seeking pleasure and using food as comfort, as reward, as love. It might have saved us a lot of pain and heartache. But actually what it does is it doesn't actually take away the pain. It just numbs it and delays it for later on. And then we develop these unhealthy relationships with food and try and go on diets trying to fix them. So if you imagine like an iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is the only part that's above the surface. The tip of the iceberg is like what you're actually eating day to day, like what you're actually putting in your mouth. But the whole iceberg underneath the surface, that is your entire relationship with food. The psychology of like why you eat, how you eat, who you are as an eater, what your identity is around food, all of those beliefs, all of those memories, and all of your relationships, your career, how fulfilled you feel in your life, because all of that dictates what you end up eating and your behaviors around food. So I kept thinking, you know, the perfect diet will fix this. You know, I just need to find the perfect diet. When I've found the perfect diet, then I'll be healed. You know, I'm sure that, you know, my food combining is all off, or I'm sure that I'm just having too many carbs, or I'm sure that I'm having too much fruit, or too many good fats, or whatever it might be. I'm sure that I'll find the perfect diet. And then what happened was my dad was given 4 months to live, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And obviously this completely shattered me and completely shook my world. And he started reading books on cancer. He was very intellectual and read so many books, and he started reading about cancer knowing that he was dying. And I started doing the same. And because I was already obsessed with food, the books that stood out to me were cancer prevention, lifestyle, diet. And before I knew it, I had been engulfed in some books that told me that veganism was the best way to reduce your cancer risk. So I was like, oh my God, this is it. I found the perfect diet. This has got to be it. This is my answer. And I felt so much guilt and shame that I had found what I thought was the Holy Grail too late to be able to save my dad, because my dad was on these, my dad couldn't even keep food down at that point. So after he died, I thought, I've got to share this message. I've got to go out into the world and tell everyone about veganism. And because I was a perfectionist and because I still had disordered eating, I didn't do this by halves. I didn't just go vegan. I went gluten-free, I went fat-free, I went sugar-free, I cut out caffeine, no alcohol. I pretty much cut everything out until I was just eating fruit and veg. And even then I was worried, am I eating too many fruits? Because it's sugar, isn't it? So I still had this really negative relationship with food. And I didn't even realize until one day I discovered that I was binging on a tub of almond butter and dates. And I realized that I was still restricting by going on juice cleanses. And I thought, yeah, I haven't actually fixed anything here, have I? My eating disorder just has another face. And this is actually something that I see is really common at the moment in the wellness industry, is we take things a step too far instead of finding peace with ourselves and peace with food. So I realized this, and me and my then partner were having talks about getting pregnant and trying for a baby. And the thought of this was so, like such a new thought for me, and it completely shook me, because I remember looking in the mirror at my body, this body that I had spent years at war with, and thinking, okay, if I'm gonna grow a human in here, something has to change. Because if I have to grow a human baby in here, I know that I can't keep treating my body the way that I am. I can't restrict, I can't be binging, I can't be using food in these, abusive ways. I need to find a peaceful place with myself and with my body and with food, because I can't grow a human baby on juice cleanses and fruits and vegetables. I can't grow a human baby if I'm binging on the weekend and then starving myself in the week. And then I thought, okay, if I wouldn't do that for a human, for a child that's imaginary, why would I not do that for myself? Why have I not been doing that for myself all these years? And I thought to myself, you know, you're not ready for a child. You need to focus on loving and nourishing your body without child first. And if you can do that for a year, then maybe we'll talk about it. And so I went on this journey of self-love, and I chucked away my scales, and I basically started inspecting my relationship with food one belief at a time. Every time I felt a fear or anxiety come up around a certain food, I would question it and go, where did this come from? Is this truth? Is this a story or belief that I want to keep believing and want to keep playing out in my life? Because at that time, my head was so full of all of this overwhelming information about nutrition and about which diet is the best. And I was hearing this person talk about veganism, this person talk about paleo, this person talking about quitting sugar, this person talking about the Dukan diet, 5-2, intermittent fasting, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, my brain is just full. I just need to let it all go. And it was just the most liberating thing ever. So I want to just do a little exercise with you guys, if you don't mind. And it's about beliefs, and it's about these kind of diet culture beliefs that we take on as truth and then express ourselves with. So I just want to raise a show of hands. If any of these beliefs ring true for you, or if you have ever believed any of these to be true. And there's absolutely no judgment, by the way, because I've believed all of them and more. So have you ever believed that food is the enemy? Have you believed that fat in food will make you fat? Have you believed that you should count your calories Monday to Friday, but on the weekends, calories don't count? How many have you believed that sugar is evil? Carbs are terrible. That one comes from the Atkins diet, I think. How many of you guys have believed that if you have one bad food in the day, you may as well write off the rest of the day, because it doesn't matter, right? Just start again on Monday. How many of you believe that diets have to start on Monday? There's no other day. Right. So now, if you had a little girl or a boy, and they came up to you and they said, Mom, diets have to start on Monday. Or Mom, this food is bad, and if I eat it, I can just eat all the rest of the bad foods and then start again tomorrow. Or if they came up to you and they said, thin people are automatically happier people. That's another one. Would you believe that as healthy for your child? Would you want that for them? Would you? But we accept that for ourselves all the time. So my moment of transformation came when I thought about having a child, and suddenly my picture became bigger than just myself. Because when you're like really consumed with food and diets and weight loss, it's a really tunnel vision way to live. You don't see the big picture. You just think you're only here to lose weight and get down to a number, and then your life can magically begin. How many of you guys have believed that if you get to a certain number on the scale, suddenly you'll be happy and confident and free and all your dreams will come true? Yeah, I kept doing that, and I got down and down and down and down, and it never happened. I was like, where is this feeling? Where are all the rainbows and butterflies? I thought I was supposed to feel amazing at this number, and I don't. I still feel empty. And it was because I hadn't really addressed the problem, which was I didn't love myself. So what that girl said to me on the playground, that is what I needed to do more than anything, was to actually love myself. And what I've discovered is when you make peace with food and go on that journey, you're actually making peace with yourself. Because healing your relationship with food is healing your relationship with yourself. Because your relationship with food is a reflection of your relationship with you. So these addictive tendencies that we have, they are not something that we should be condemning at all. Rather, these addictive tendencies, and that could be, emotional eating, that could be like a glass of wine at the end of a stressful day, that could be feeling anxious, refreshing Instagram, which is something that I notice that I do still, for sure. They're not something that we should be condemning, but they are like our teachers shining a light on where we maybe need to look at, where our souls are actually hungry for something a bit deeper than what we're trying to fill it up with. So at the time of this kind of moment of realization for me, I was in a relationship that I didn't really feel able to fully be myself in. It looked great on the outside, but it didn't feel like me. I was in a job that, again, looked quite glamorous on the outside, but I didn't feel like it was me. And I was living in a city that didn't inspire me. And all the friends that I had in my life didn't feel like real, deep friendships. So I would say that I was living a life that did not feel completely fulfilled. So I was turning to food and these outside sources to try and fill myself up from the outside in, instead of filling myself up from the inside out. And when I went on this journey of self-love, what I discovered was it wasn't just about me healing my relationship with food, it was actually about me transforming my life. Because then I developed such a sense of self-love and self-worth that I had the confidence to do things like leave my relationship, change my life. And then I went on to help other women do the same. So then I wrote my book, I started working with clients, I wrote my online program, started running retreats. And it was all because I decided to take back my life when it came to food and love and accept myself. And around that time, my ex's sister said to me, "Mel, I feel sorry for you because you're just not satisfied with a normal life, are you?" And I was like, I'm not sure if that's an insult or a compliment, but yeah, I guess you're right. I'm not satisfied with a normal life. She said, "You're always hungry for more." And I was like, God damn, you're right, I am. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't think I was ungrateful for what I had. But I think if you think that your life, if you feel like your life is not filling you up, if you feel like you're living in a life that you should be really grateful for and everyone else says, oh, you should be so lucky and grateful, but you don't feel like it's yours, you feel like there's more out there for you, then that is your job, that is your mission to follow that voice. That is your mission to follow that calling. So our addictions are not something that we should be condemning. They are teachers and they can help us, they can help guide us in the direction of where we're supposed to go. For example, if we can get curious about them and observe them, they can teach us things about our life where we are maybe out of alignment. So maybe, for example, you get home from a really stressful day at work and, on the way home, you find yourself in the newsagents, grabbing like a chocolate bar. So maybe that's not that you've got terrible willpower. Maybe that is actually, the root of that is stress at work. So maybe that is, I need to set more boundaries around work, or I need to de-stress, or I need to meditate in the mornings, or I need to make a decision that I'm not going to work with this kind of project or this person, or maybe it's a change of job on a bigger level. Maybe it's you're hungry for change in your life. Maybe if you notice that when that guy doesn't call you back or that guy doesn't text you back, it makes you want to binge eat all of a sudden. Maybe that's not because you're just greedy. Maybe that's because actually what you're really hungry for on a deeper level is love, intimacy, connection. So maybe that is actually a sign that you need to give yourself more love, that you need to give yourself more time, more intimacy with you and work on the relationship you have with yourself, which is obviously the most important relationship of our whole lives. I was walking home from a class the other day and I think it was like a 45-minute walk. And I blame Google for this because I literally have no idea how to walk anywhere in London without Google Maps. I'm completely reliant on it. And I came out of this class and I had to get home and my battery was on 1%. And I started walking home and I literally had no idea where I was going apart from with the maps on. And then my phone died. And I instantly felt that feeling of disconnection. And then I noticed my mind go, oh, go to Pret and get a chocolate bar. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening to me right now. I just wrote a book on this. Okay. Practice what you preach, practice what you preach. Okay, this is teaching me that I feel disconnected when my phone dies, right? This is teaching me to find a deeper connection offline. So this is teaching me that I need to find a deeper connection with myself, with a higher power, get into nature, meditate more. Things that I do to feel connected are journaling, getting into nature, going to the park with a book, or praying. And so I had a little taste of, my own lessons there, which I found really interesting. So what is really cool is addictions are not necessarily bad. It's really about a lack of connection or fulfillment that creates them. So there was a study done on rats in the 70s. You might have heard of it. And basically one rat was put alone in a cage with 2 bottles of water. One was just water, and one was water laced with cocaine. And every time they ran this experiment, which was about addiction, every time they ran this experiment, the rats would choose the drugs, get addicted, and eventually die. But Professor Bruce Alexander came along, saw this experiment, and thought to himself, well, the rat is alone in a cage. But rats are social creatures, just like humans, and they thrive off interaction and connection with other rats. So he thought, if a human was alone in a cage, wouldn't the human choose the drugs if they were offered it, just for something to do? So basically, he decided to build this rat park, which was like a haven for rats. They had all their rat friends, they had rat games, they had like rat food, they had rat Love Island on TV, like they were living their best lives with these rats. And then they put in these 2 bottles of water again, the one with the water and the one with the water laced with cocaine. Can you guess what happened? They rejected the drugs completely. They chose just the water. And he concluded that this was because they were living fulfilled lives. They felt connected. They didn't feel isolated. They had a purpose in their lives. So I think this is just fascinating, and we can link this back to food or alcohol or anything else that we use as a drug to numb our pain often. So what this means is when you're feeling a lack of connection or a lack of fulfillment somewhere in your life, you're far more susceptible to those addictive tendencies. You're far more easily led to go and grab that chocolate bar or go and have that glass of wine or go and order that takeaway or whatever it might be. And we all do this, right? We all do this, but it's just really interesting to become aware of that and just observe it. And hopefully you can then heal what it is that you're really hungry for. These companies, these food product companies often use this to their advantage as well. So they use our emotional attachments to food to market to us in quite subtle ways. But when you are aware of it, it really becomes obvious. For example, have a break, have a Kit Kat. Basically saying, your life's really tough, you deserve a break. Go and take a break and reward yourself with our Kit Kat. Or Coca-Cola, life tastes good. Go and celebrate your life by drinking our carbonated sugary pop drink. Or Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. Basically normalizing it to eat a whole tub in one setting, right? Or maybe the worst culprit of them all, McDonald's. Are your kids misbehaving again? Swing by and get them a Happy Meal. That'll put a smile on their face, because it's a Happy Meal, right? So before we're even 6 years old, we've already got this imprinted onto our brains that food is there to handle our emotions, to make us happy, to numb our pain, which I just find really interesting. So I want to do a little exercise with you guys. I would like you to get into pairs, just partner up. And don't be shy. And I just want you to share with your partner what that kind of one go-to emotional food is for you. Might be like crisps or chocolate or ice cream, chips, cheese, whatever it might be. What is that like go-to food? Okay, everyone done? Everyone done? Okay, everyone finished? Guys, just one food. Everyone's like, I like this, I like chocolate, I like crisps, I like ice cream, I like pizza. Okay, so now By the way, my go-to emotional food when I was really an emotional eater was always pick a mix. You know, the sweets that you choose and put in a bag. That was my thing. I'm talking like I would go to the cinema and spend like extortionate amounts on pick a mix and not even care about seeing a film. Okay, so next part of the exercise, I want you to think about what is the earliest memory of you having that food. What is the earliest memory of you having that food? And share it with your partner. Okay, everyone done? Everyone done? Okay. So next, I want you to just identify what is the emotion associated with that memory. What is the feeling of that memory? And share it with your partner. Not now, but the feeling associated in that environment, in that memory. So share it with your partner. Everyone got that? Okay. Okay, so I'll share mine. So my earliest memory of pick a mix was my mum and dad picking me up from school on a Friday, and if I was really good, then I would get £1 to spend on pick a mix. And so that was like my favourite time of the whole week, and I really looked forward to that because I was just so excited to get that £1. And so the feeling associated for me with that memory was reward and validation for being good, and it's a treat. So in my adult life, what I noticed that I started doing was any time that I felt like I'd been good or deserved a reward or a treat, I would go get that pick a mix. My partner Rick, his go-to emotional food was always Nutella. And he used to come home with a jar of Nutella when he'd had a bad day, and I'd be like, do we need to talk about this? But his earliest memory of Nutella was eating it on pancakes with his mum. And so he associated that with love and connection. So when he felt like he needed love and connection, he would go get that Nutella, because food feels like love, right? So does anyone want to share what theirs were? Just a couple of people. Anyone? Yeah?
Mine was mac and cheese.
Uh-huh.
Mine was mac and cheese, and I remember eating it at home with my mom, my brother, and my sister, just like having a good time, like just a happy memory.
Yeah, yeah. So then if you, in your adult life, then if you feel like you need to go to a happy place, that is the happy place.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share? Everyone's so shy. Anyone else? One more?
I can share mine. Oh,
yeah.
You go, because I talk too much.
Mine was sushi, and I kind of discovered it when I was doing a year abroad in New Orleans, so when I was 20, and it was just a really happy year and felt really fun and carefree, and I ended up eating it every day, and it became my cure for everything, hangovers, or so it just became this really joyful food.
So it symbolised like joy, freedom, really carefree.
Year.
Yeah.
A really fun year.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Another really common thing is if we weren't allowed it at home as kids, then when we grow up and we're suddenly adults and free and liberated, we're like, oh my God, I can eat it now. I'm allowed to eat whatever I want. So it like symbolises this rebellion and this freedom and independence. So food is parallel to our life. So, you know, our relationship with food can be this kind of comfort, this emotional tool, but it can also be pleasure. And I think when we get sucked into diet land, we forget that we're allowed to receive pleasure and joy from food. It's allowed to be a completely celebratory experience. And a good question to ask yourself when you're turning to food is, am I using this to celebrate, or am I using it to escape? Because often we're actually trying to push down a feeling. So yeah, our relationship with food is a reflection of our relationship with life, which means, you know that saying, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything? So it's kind of like how you do food is often how you do life. So if you are a perfectionist around your food, you're probably also a perfectionist in your life. If you are controlling around food, you're probably also controlling in life. And who's like an all or nothing person? Anyone here like totally all or nothing? So if you're all or nothing with food, you're probably also all or nothing in your life, in your relationships, in your job or projects. And who here can say that they are a fast eater? Everyone. Yeah, this doesn't surprise me, right? Because you guys are like high achievers. So if you're a fast eater, you're probably also going through your life quite fast, which is why it's difficult to get people to slow down their eating, because it's basically like saying slow down your life pace. Do you also drive your car quite fast? If you drive, do you go through your life quite fast in other areas? Yeah. So what this means is when we are able to heal our stuff with food, we can also heal our life. And if we're able to enjoy a more intuitive way of eating, it means we're more likely to enjoy an intuitive way of living. So I always say intuitive eating paves the way for intuitive living. When I was able to learn how to really listen to my body, I was also able to learn how to listen to my gut. I was able to learn how to listen to my intuition. I realized that the two went hand in hand. So a lot of people think that when they're going to listen to their body, they think that their body is just telling them to eat all kinds of junk. And it's simply not the case. So I want to explain to you guys, just to finish, the difference between your real hunger and your emotional cravings. So real hunger comes on very gradually, slowly, and you feel it here, right? You feel it in the stomach. And it gives you the time and that patience to go, what am I hungry for? What am I going to choose to nourish my body? Whereas an emotional craving is actually a psychological need, and it comes on very fast in the mind, and it's that urge, it's that impulse, and it usually fixates on one particular kind of food. So it comes on really fast, and if you don't check yourself, you kind of like glaze over and you become this zombie state, and before you know it, you've eaten something and you don't even know how you got there. If we were doing that with drugs, it would be a pretty big problem, right? But we do that with food a lot. So when we have those psychological cravings, what we're actually craving is something deeper, usually love, usually connection. And all of those things that we are craving, we can give to ourselves. We can never truly get those needs met from someone else, a food, a drink, a substance, social media, all of these kind of external things. It's a way in which we try to fill ourselves up from the outside in, rather than filling ourselves up from the inside out in fulfillment and living a truly full up life. So thank you. I hope this has given you some food for thought, and that you will be able to hopefully bring a little bit more awareness to your relationship with food and use it to your advantage. Thank you. So do we have time for questions?
Q&A. You have to speak into this because we're recording this for YouTube. Does anyone have questions?
Thank you so much. I think speaking for all of us, we all really enjoyed that. I've got a question, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer it, but it's to do with the whole sort of body positive, intuitive eating movement. Me and a lot of my friends, we have a lot of intolerances, which really hinders our ability to eat freely. And I often feel like that's not taken into consideration into the body positive and intuitive eating movement.
Yeah.
And I would just like to hear your thoughts on it, really.
Yeah.
You know, gluten-free, dairy-free, things like that.
Sure. Thank you so much. So first of all, I would like to offer that the body positive movement is a separate thing from intuitive eating, and you can do one without the other and vice versa. So I would say that, the body positive movement is a movement in itself, and the people that kind of started that have their own definition of what that is and what they stand for. But you can decide that for you to be positive for your body, for you to show your body love, means to not have things that don't agree with it. So for example, like I consider myself to be body positive because I do positive things for my body. Do you know what I mean? Although I'm not a part necessarily of that movement, and the roots of it obviously were different from where I'm sat. But if doing a positive thing for your body is not having certain foods that don't agree with it, then that's absolutely great. I don't think intuitive eating is about, just eating rubbish all the time. I think it's about noticing what feels good and what doesn't. And that's definitely something that I've learned along my journey, because I thought that going into intuitive eating would mean that I would just gain loads of weight and would just sit around eating, donuts and ice cream and all kinds of, cereal for dinner and all this kind of stuff. And it's not what happened. I think initially there might be like a boomerang phase where you're just like, oh my God, freedom. But then after that, what happens is you start to recognize what feels good and what doesn't. And you start to notice that actually it feels really good to have this amount of vegetables, and it feels really good to have meat or to not have meat, and it feels really good to have gluten or to not have gluten. And it's really about you taking your power back around food and not thinking that it has to look a certain way. It's about you becoming the boss of your own body.
Thank you so much. That was,
you.
yeah, good.
Cool.
Any other questions? You can pass it around.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for the talk. I just wanted to know a little bit more, and if you're comfortable sharing, but just how your transition between, you talked about your veganism, your perfectionism, to kind of to the state that you are now. And I've heard that, kind of, we all know, like, the path to whatever is kind of looks like this. And
Yeah.
if you've had a few of these dips, or and how you overcame those, and how you also got to the state that you're in now.
Yeah, sure. Do you mean like from disordered, or
From
do you mean
disordered
from
eating
veganism?
till you are present.
Yeah, sure. So it was definitely like a bumpy road to begin with, because when you are so ingrained in that diet culture, you feel like it's like a lot of your identity is wrapped up in it. So I didn't really know who I was without a diet, because it consumed so much of my life. So giving myself that freedom to break free from that felt like I was rediscovering who I was, and almost like creating a new identity for myself, because it had taken up so much headspace that when I got rid of that, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with myself anymore, because it was like a full-time job for me, dieting. So coming out of that was definitely a bumpy road, but I just kept focusing on, I'm getting my life back here. So even though to begin with I gained weight, I also gained my life back, which was so much more important to me. But yeah, I definitely had to figure out all of these different beliefs and stories that I was telling myself around different diets and food, and the people that I followed. I had to unfollow a lot of people that were just kind of projecting their beliefs out onto social media, and I was like, that's not helpful for me for where I'm at right now. I just need to be able to make my own intuitive decisions around food, rather than listening to every single expert that's got a different opinion on food. I just needed to like block all that out to just come home to my body, and that really helped me. But for sure, it was a bumpy road, and yeah, I realized along that road that veganism wasn't for me anymore. And me deciding to be a vegan, my intention behind that wasn't as it should have been. It was because I thought it was the perfect diet, and because I thought it would heal me and make me lose weight, as opposed to what actually feels good. And I have a lot of friends that are vegan, but they do it for much more ethical reasons. But personally for me, I feel good when I have a bit of animal products in my life still, and I don't think anyone should be shamed for that.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Mel, for coming.
Cool. Thank you for having me.